Hello everybody, Andy here from a Kill Team channel that is on the internet. How's it going? Since Kill Team dropped 9 months ago, I want to say, or coming up to a year, it was a refresh of last edition system with only minor tweaks, but hopefully quite impactful tweaks for all of us gamers. However, as they've gone on, they've clearly decided that they want to change a few things from how they rewrote the rules, and as such, over the last 9 months, they have made a bunch of changes to the core rules. So if you are only a infrequent player of the rule system, ultimately not much has truly changed for you. However, some subtleties have, and so in this video I have come up with 14 rules that I am either going to correct you on how they now play or just inform you of how they've always played, because of course here, although some of these are brand new rules like how you are supposed to deal with the top floor of Volkus, some of them are just FAQ erratas that confirm, yes, we really did mean this. As we go through where it's necessary, I'm going to throw up the particular rule change so that you know what I'm actually talking about, even though I'm explaining it on screen to you. If you want to stop, pause the video, read how the rule is actually correctly worded, feel free to do that, it'll be on screen for you. I'm going to be taking it all off Battle Kit. You can, of course, get it from the GW PDFs, but for some reason, I've just always used Battle Kit since this is edition launch. There you go. All right, let's get straight into it because this is a bit of a long one, and of course, it's very in-depth, very intense as you're learning new rules, so hopefully you enjoy. So let's get straight up into the game room. Okay, and here in front of me we have everything that we're going to need to demonstrate all of the core rules changes, and don't worry, I am going to flash up the rule that is relevant when it's required. We need a heavy terrain, we need the large stronghold, we need a gallow dark wall, we need another piece of heavy terrain, we're going to need a Ravener, we're going to need the Knob from the Wrecker crew, we're going to need the Squig from the Wrecker crew, we're going to need 2 Novitiates, one of which is a medic, we're going to need just any of the, what are they called, Vespids, and we're going to need a Plague Marine, which is not in front of me, so I'm going to get that. Oh, why yes, it seems to be my new Crossfire Games Battle Box. Interesting. If you want to know more about this, check the link in the description where you can get up to 20% off. Don't forget to use my code for even more off. We take the dice box out, we take the essentials box out, then the magnetic tray is here, and we grab, which Plague Marine do we want? We use this guy, he's cool, nice. Oh, actually there is one more bit that I need. This was obviously a bit to advertise the battle box from Crossfire Games, but I actually also need a recon token. Jump in here, we take out my TAC Ops, we get out my Crossfire Games token caddy, we crack this open. Now, awkwardly, I'm not actually using the Crossfire Games tokens. Well, I'm using some of them for my Plague Marine team specifically. But we need this buy the same token. We're going to take ourselves a recon token. There you go. And we're going to put it all back together and put it away. Not going to need the scoreboard, so that can go fully away now. And we can get back to the show. Total aside, I consider the Crossfire Games Battle Box kind of the ultimate premium version for vertical stacking. So if you want to put it in a backpack, it's perfect. If you want something a little bit more horizontal, check out the GG Easy. In some situations, it's going to be better. You decide for yourself. I use both. I'm not telling you which to buy. I'm telling you what I use, and you just decide what works for you. Okay, let's start with one of the biggest issues, which, hey, everybody loves talking about line of sight, right? So line of sight obscurity, they've changed when you can take obscurity versus when you can take cover. Let's look at this simple interaction. The Knob is going to shoot the Plague Marine. At the moment, he can obviously retain cover because he's within 1 inch of that piece of heavy terrain. And in the old rules, he would also be able to retain obscuring. Retain obscuring is not a word. He would be obscured. There you go. However, they have changed the rules, so now you cannot both retain cover and gain obscuring from the same piece of terrain. So even though the target line would hit here, and then you have your 3 inch, and then you continue, and that would give him obscuring, you now could not do that. Cool. Nice and simple, whereas before this would give you both obscuring and retain cover. Now you choose, you can either get cover or you can get obscuring from the same piece of terrain. Let's extrapolate this out a bit because they even FAQ'd this, just so that everybody knows. Here we go. So, same thing, Nob's going to shoot the Plague Marine. Now, you might be thinking, well, this wall is so far away, surely it no longer counts as the same piece of terrain. This is not the case. Even though you are here, and the obscurity occurs from here, you get the cover from here, this is still one piece of terrain. You choose, still in this situation, because this is the same piece of terrain. Do you want to retain cover from here or retain obscuring from here? Cool. However, if you add this piece to the situ, we're over an inch here. Okay, now we got that. So we hit this, we get obscurity. Then we hit this, we get cover. These are two separate pieces of terrain. Boom. You can have retained cover from here. You can have obscurity from here. Super quick maths, by the way. Obscurity is always better than retained cover. I imagine there's a breakpoint where if you're able to retain 2 and you have a 5-up save, you should take the cover save instead. But in general, obscurity always better than retaining. Cool, just so you know. That covers that. Let's have another quick look. The top of Volkus. Okay, this is our top of Volkus here. In the past, you would be able to put a 25mm base up the top there, and you would be able to essentially move block everybody from being on there. So you put a 40 up there. This is a much better thing to show this. Clearly, there is no room up here to put any other model. Like, it literally won't fit. However, they've FAQ errated this. Oh no, sorry, this is just a whole new rule. This isn't an FAQ. This is an entirely new rule they added to the game. Basically, you cannot do this. It says that no matter what size model is up here and how much room is actually left on this top, you can always, no matter where a model is up here, you can always perform a charge action on it. And basically, the actual, like where the things actually go doesn't matter. You can always charge whoever is up here, whether it's a 40, a 32, a 25, 28, doesn't matter. You are never safe from charges when you're up on that top piece of the Volkus terrain. We now leave Volkus only temporarily, don't worry, and we have a quick look at the Gallowdark terrain. So here we see my Gallowdark terrain, which I could obviously not be bothered to actually assemble. And we see we have a door here, delightfully symbolised by this piece of silver strip, which I did with a Sharpie because I couldn't be bothered to do any more hobby work on this terrain. And we have our friendly local Vespid right this side of the door. We'll open the door. There we go. Once upon a time, in the old rules, you have recon, you want to plant a beacon, you can put it that side of the door. Okay? Perfect. Now, obviously, when you're planting beacons, you have to plant a beacon over 6 inches away from each other beacon. But of course, you can never, ever, apart from sometimes it turns out, measure through Gallowdark walls. So you close the door. Now, technically, this beacon is infinitely far away from you. So you could then drop another beacon this side of the door just by closing this door. And that allows you to very, very easily plant beacons on Gallowfall. They have changed that. Now, whenever you are measuring the range from one beacon to another, you measure through the Gallowdark walls. This actually makes planting beacons on Gallowdark significantly harder, but in fairness, being able to just open and close the door was obviously stupid to then just place a beacon on the other side. So good change, like it. One of the craziest, most broken rules in this edition of Kill Team was how Gallowfall worked when it came to the interaction of guard and counteract. This has been rectified, don't you worry. You are no longer able to guard as a counteract, because of course guard is simply a shoot action. That's all it is. And of course, when you counteract, you can perform any one AP action. That does include guard, so you would be able to, as a Marine, run up, open a door, and then in your counteract, guard, shoot again, and obviously, in case you're not aware, guarding is significantly stronger than counteracting because you're able to interrupt that action. You're able to shoot when they charge you. You're able to fight first. Guard's an incredibly strong action at all points in the game, doubly so when you're able to then guard as part of your counteract. So they've removed that from the game. You cannot guard as a counteract action. Then we have stat changes during activations. Basically, the stats of your models only ever actually change before or after an action occurs. They do not change in the middle of an action. This is all super niche stuff that will not come up in most games, but you've got to understand the concept of snapshotting your stats. So basically, when you perform an action, everything that your model is, all of its numbers, lock in, and then you perform the action. At the end of the action, the snapshot is taken again. You then look at your numbers again, and that is what is it. However, your weapon stats do change during the middle of an action. Now, I think this is a terrible decision, because why would you make this decision? It doesn't make any sense. However, let me tell you what that means. This, again, is super, super niche, and as far as I'm aware, only affects 2 rules in the game. One is for Plague Marines and their Toxic rule, and one is for Harlequins, Void Dancers, and their Jest rule. It's not Infinite Jest, that's a Batman comic. Segarak's Jest. Those are the only 2 rules in the game that I'm aware of that are affected by your weapon stats changing in the middle of an action, as opposed to every other number in the game which changes before or after an action. Additionally, just a whole load of rules have also updated their wording so that they now work before or after an action, not during. Again, this is just to simplify timings, and again, it's this concept of snapshot stats. Keep that in mind. If you ever have a question, snapshot stats will tell you the answer, except for those 2 rules, Toxic and Jest. Okay, and now we've got a really big one, which is the timing, the order of operations, and it's would, is, before, initiative order. If you ever find yourself in the middle of a thing and 2 things happen at the same time, it comes down to you, when do these happen? The answer is would, is, before, and then if none of those make sense, turn activation. And let's be clear, not which operative is activated, means who has initiative for the turn. Get to decide in which order they occur. If multiple rules have the same would, is, before, then it goes again down to whoever has the initiative order for the turn gets to decide. So, super simple example, let's say our Plague Marine has just shot and killed our big chainsaw lady, and within 3 inches we have our medic. There we go. This novitiate dies. The medic wants to res this novitiate, however, the novitiate's player, being a big brain, also wants to perform glorious martyrdom to hurt the Plague Marine. Now, you might think it through logically, well, could they glorious martyrdom themselves and then get res by the medic? And that sounds weird, but you know what? Dying and then not dying because of a medic is honestly just as weird as dying and then killing yourself to get revived by a medic. Same difference, mechanically, who cares? Not to worry, this is now super simple, super clean rules. The medic has the wording, when this model would be incapacitated. Would comes first. Cool, these are simultaneous actions. So glorious martyrdom is before this model is removed from the kill zone. Medic, when this model would be incapacitated. Therefore, you pass the chance for the medic to res in this simultaneous action. The medic says, no, I don't want to res because this happens first in the timing order, because would is before. You go is, nothing's happening in the is step, you go to the before step. That's when you glorious martyrdom, you blow up. This is a simultaneous action. Therefore, the glorious martyrdom model gets removed and the medic has already passed their step of this simultaneous action and cannot then res. Again, keep in mind, this is only for simultaneous actions. If an action occurs and then something else can happen, it still works that way. So let's just hypothetically imagine that our Plague Marine dies. This could never occur, Plague Marines are far too cool, but it's fine, we can pretend. Similar to Glorious Martyrdom, they want to blow themselves up using Poisonous Demise, which says before this model is removed from the kill zone. This happens, blows up, done. That is the action ended. This also kills this model, great. However, because the Poisonous Demise action has finished, we then could start a next action in which the medic, we go back to the would is before. The medic can still res because these were not simultaneous effects. Cool. Then of course a really big one is jumping. So, can this model jump to here? Yes, because the new rule for jump is, sometimes Kill Team gets it right, let me tell you that. They obviously saw that there was an issue with jumps, they figured out how to solve it, and that is to perform a jump, you must be on a vantage point. This is a vantage point, therefore you get your 4-inch move to there. Superb, lovely, big fan. Because ultimately, thematically, A jump was designed in the game so that you go from point A to point B up above the floor. However, the raw sweat lords changed this and said, well, because the word vantage point wasn't originally in the wording, I can jump from anywhere to anything, right? And so this piece of terrain is here. Surely I can use my jump to move 4 inches hovering above the floor, and then I just drop. That's a valid jump. Or they would do a thing where there's a, you can wall jump. So you climb, 3 inches up the top, and then you jump 4 inches to get over mines or barbed wire or all this stuff. Or they would climb halfway up a ladder and perform that jump. And now none of that's legal. You have to be on a vantage point to perform the jump action. You cannot even jump from the kill zone floor, because again, some unscrupulous folk would say you could jump 4 inches up, move the rest of your move, fall down, right? You can't do that. You must perform the jump action starting on a piece of vantage point terrain that you can stand on, which I think is a really nice way to fix a rule that was heavily abused by a lot of people, when really it's just a movement rule that allows you to spend more time on the higher areas of the board. Because of course Kill Team understands that you're playing a lot of time spending on their official map packs like Volkus, which doesn't have enough terrain in the kit to actually give you walkways so that you can have a full board both on the kill zone floor and on the vantage terrain at different levels. It accepts that they don't give you enough terrain for that, and so jump was included. Jump is very liberal, a nice just free 4-inch move, right? Lovely. You just don't need a walkway there. You can jump. 4 inches is quite big, also, my girlfriend tells me. And so all of the raw Sweatlord stuff about being able to jump from halfway up a ladder is just, let's just say they fixed that now, and that's great. Love it. They've also updated equipment placement quite heavily, it turns out. Firstly, the heavy barricade now must be wholly within 4 inches of your drop zone, not the 3 that it used to be. That extra inch, very big, it turns out. Any physical model piece of equipment, like light barricades, heavy barricades, ladders, portable barricade, must be placed on the kill zone floor over 2 inches from accessible terrain. Apart from on Beta Decima, where it can go on vantage points and within accessible terrain, but ignore that, nobody plays that, obviously. Whereas offensive markers, as I term them, for example mines, must be over 2 inches from other markers and accessible terrain, which means they can go on vantage points and next to your player placed terrain. So of course the standard setup you might see is barbed wire and a mine. Additional note, ladders, they can be moved through. You just move straight through it as if it's not there. However, they are there, just to be clear. So if you misplace a ladder and it means you then cannot tow in and really get into that nook, cranny or crevice, you can't just move the ladder out the way. You can't push the ladder in. It is a physical object that is there. The fact you can walk through it does not mean you can stand in it or just move it because you placed it poorly, right? Here's an important one. So doors, you got one here, you got one here, right? Did you know that when you counteract move, you get a 2-inch move? Isn't that exciting? Well, some people thought, oh, does that mean I have my move stat, but I actually, of 6 inches, whatever it may be, but I am limited to a physical move as the crow flies of 2 inches. Therefore, I could be in here and end up in here. No, it is 2 inches. You just get a 2-inch move stat for that move. Therefore, you are not able to counteract move through accessible terrain. Just heads up for you there. This is also relevant for other types of moves. For example, the Plague Marines have Lumbering Death, which means they get a 3-inch move. If they don't move over 3 inches, then they get access to Ceaseless when they attack. Cool. So the question becomes, is it 3 inches as the crow flies, but they still actually get their 5-inch move, and therefore they could go through a door, but they haven't actually physically moved more than 3 inches? No, going through that door uses one of your inch movement points. Everything in this game is like attacks, and that includes accessible terrain going through a door, whether that's these doors on Volkus or this door on Gallowdark, or something like, for example, going over a piece of barbed wire. Remember that in general, things in Kill Team are always measured fully, and it will be a tax on your movement. The only time you wouldn't measure things diagonally, etc., is when it explicitly states it in the rule. For example, with a smoke grenade, or the fly keyword where it specifically says only measure the horizontal distance and then the vertical distance is infinite. I'm now going to very quickly run down some FAQs, which to my mind didn't need to be FAQ'd, but clearly for some they did. When a model has salvo, they've added the word different targets. The salvo rule says you can shoot 2 different targets. They just confirmed that it cannot be the same target, obviously, but good to clarify. If you have a shooter that has 2 pistols, he's going to shoot 2 models. It does have to be 2 different models. When it comes to a stronghold door on Volkus, you cannot ever shoot through a stronghold door. Some people thought you could, which I think is very valid due to how you ignore control range to perform the fight action when you're on a stronghold door. They've confirmed no, you cannot shoot through the door, whether it's a squig fight shooting on death, or if it's whether like the Corsair duelist or the Felgor dude that can shoot into melee. None of them can actually perform the shoot action. Even though you are performing the fight action without visibility, you can't perform the shoot action without visibility on a stronghold door. This one was not FAQ, but just so you're aware, when you're retaliating from inside a stronghold, you fight first, which is cool. However, do note that some models have not a fight first ability. They will instead say that they get to perform a strike or a parry, it's normally a parry, before the normal activation. So if they were to charge from the outside here, perform the fight action, the guy inside then becomes the operative that gets to strike first. However, they would still get to perform a parry outside of the normal activation. So essentially they are still fighting first. Normally they're just limited to parries. Fights first is not the same as outside of normal activation. There are various mind rules in the game, from Phobos, from Nemclaw, from just equipment. All of these interrupt an action. They do not interrupt an activation. I know that's very clear if you just read the rule, but be aware that is a thing. Final one is why we have the Vespid here, and that is very simply, did you know that the fly action is a teleport? That's right, if you read how it's worded, it simply says, measure your 6-inch movement horizontally. That's all the fly keyword is. That means you might think, okay, I'm on top of this piece of terrain. If I want to get to right behind this door, I would need to measure along here, down and back. And all fly is doing is removing my need to measure the vertical distance. That's not what it's doing at all. The way fly is worded is it literally teleports you in here. You simply measure a top-down 6-inch radius, and if your base ends anywhere within that 6 inches, you can go there, there, or there without having to measure your base going over, down, and back. So there you go, that's a fun one, isn't it? So obviously from the game room there, that ended quite abruptly, so this is just me telling you the video's now finished. And this is a bit of a, hey, thanks for viewing. Check out my affiliate links, that'd be awesome. Have a good one, bye.